Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of the Qlik Integration online series. Before we move on with the agenda, I would like you to introduce the team. First of all, we have Richard Pierce, Qlik expert and Qlik Luminary for the last 4 years. We have Ryan Arp, Qlik and mashup expert. We have Pierce Bachelor, the product architect for Vislib. And the last but not the least, myself. My name is Gonçalo Pereira, and I've been doing the role of a Qlik consultant and technical lead for the last 10 years. For today's agenda, we had the pleasure to invite Speros. He's one of the Qlik luminaries, and today he's the CTO and founder of Knarr. In this agenda, in our conversation, Speros is going to explain and tell us how we can leverage one online tool that will help us build the hypercubes we need for our extensions or for our mashup. And then at the end of the session, he's going to give us the first look and feel of the platform he helped to build named Knarr. I hope you guys enjoy it. Stay safe and let's move on. Recording. Okay, so it's now recording. So guys, thank you very much. So I would say, I think what makes sense to start is basically to present ourselves. I will start, then I will pass basically to Ryan, Pierce, and then of course the last Speros. So my name is Gonçalo Pereira. So I'm basically being on the Qlik world for the last 10 years, more or less, mainly as a Qlik developer, QlikView and Qlik Sense. Nowadays, actually, what I'm trying to do is more actually to start increasing my knowledge around mashups and extensions. I'm trying to play a little bit around, but I'm still very, very young on that experience. But basically, that's it. I'm basically more experienced in terms of data models, just the normal Qlik stuff. And of course, I will pass to you, Ryan. Go forward.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ryan Arper. I'm a senior Qlik Sense developer. I've got about 7 years of experience using Qlik. Started off with QlikView, then transitioned very shortly into Qlik Sense, and pretty much jumped over Qlik Sense and went straight to mashups. So I currently spend most of my times working in the mashup area. Done a bit of React, but actually at the moment my preference is Svelte. So I'm doing a lot of stuff with Svelte at the moment. So yep, that's what I'm currently doing at the moment. Pierce?
Hi, I'm Pierce Bachelor. I'm a product architect at Vislib, so I look after some of Vislib products, just like the Vislib library and Vislib Gantt. I spend a lot of time talking to BI managers, BI developers. I've worked with Qlik, so starting off in QlikView and now in Qlik Sense. So I've been doing that for just over 5 years.
Cool. Nice. In that case, let's go to our main person here. So Speros, just tell us a little bit about you, what you've been doing, and basically how is your life today, despite the problems.
I'm happy to tell you all that, yeah. My name is Speros Kokenes. I've been working in the Qlik ecosystem for about 10 years. For the first 8 or 9 years of that as like a Qlik consultant, doing first QlikView development like Pierce, then Qlik Sense came out. And when that came out, I started doing a lot of API work, so building extensions, mashups, custom engine applications. So I've spent a lot of time with the Qlik APIs. Recently, I started a company called Knarr Analytics. I'm the CTO and co-founder of that company. It's a company that produces software for more ad hoc collaborative data exploration, so allowing people to sort of in real time bring random data together and explore it in order to make a quick decision about what to do. It's a little bit different than dashboarding. And that is actually powered by the Qlik engine. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm spending a lot of time with the Qlik APIs, doing hypercubes, doing all of that confusing but useful stuff with the Qlik engine.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much again, everyone, for joining, and special Speros, thank you very much. So the idea is actually, the topic for today is actually to discuss a little bit the website that you built, the engine builder that you created. So the idea is basically give us just a little bit in terms of the idea why, what was the initial idea behind it. And then of course, for someone that might want to use, what is the best way to use it to actually to extract everything that we need. And then if you can just give a small tutorial, just share your screen and give us just a small look and feel how we do it, it would be actually perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, can I just share my screen right off the top here? Because I can show some of the inspiration for how we got here. Let me click. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, yep.
Cool. So I mentioned that, when I was a consultant, Qlik Sense came out around, I guess, 2014, and they had all these new APIs for customizing the platform. And that was really intriguing to me because, of course, I love QlikView, I still love QlikView. But of course, there were always opportunities to go above and beyond what a traditional BI tool could offer out of the box. And so Qlik Sense, the APIs presented that possibility, right? Now I was new to development, new to software development at least, trying to do that. And so of course the first thing I tried to do when Sense came out was go and sort of read the documentation and figure out, okay, how do I create an extension object or a mashup or whatever it might be. And as I was looking through the documentation, this is when Qlik Sense first came out, so no one else was really doing this stuff yet, right? There was only people just kind of experimenting very early on in the Qlik ecosystem for APIs. It was very hard to understand like what you were supposed to do. There were all these references in the documentation to these things like HyperCubes and QString expressions and QDimension infos and NX this and NX that. And reading through it and not really having any development experience and then not having any like community to rely on to like kind of learn about this stuff because it was all brand new. It was just like sort of one big headache to get going. You're like, what the heck is a HyperCube? What's an NX dimension and NX measure? How am I supposed to do all this stuff? And so I pulled up the documentation here so I could show you a little bit about kind of what that experience felt like and what it might feel like today if you're sort of new to the APIs and you're trying to figure out how to navigate these structures. So the gist of the APIs, right, is that when you're interacting with the Qlik engine, whether it's through extensions or mashups, things like that, sometimes you need to create objects or calculations in the engine. And you do that by providing these definitions that involve JavaScript objects like I mentioned, hypercubes and list objects and things like that. And those in return will be able to give you the calculations that the Qlik engine has. Now, if you're trying to figure out, okay, what definitions do I provide, then I'll try to find in here, they've changed the documentation a bit, what that looks like. There used to be a page for just the engine API. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, the engine API reference. So if you open this reference, it's got a lot of very generic information about how the engine works. And you look through here and you'll find these things like a class, and you'll find like the generic object class, and it'll have, or maybe the document class, and it'll have some methods here you could use. And some of these methods are pretty self-explanatory, like clear all. All right, if you've used QlikView or Qlik Sense before, you can probably guess what that does, right? It clears the selection state. So stuff like that as like a new developer, you're like, yeah, I get kind of how that works. But then it's like, what if I want to create a chart? You come to a method like create object, and it's like, oh, we'll provide this thing called NX info, and also this thing called object interface. Now, when you're new to this, you're probably thinking like, what the heck is NX info? What does that mean? What does object interface mean? Even worse, they've improved the documentation. Back when it first came out, these weren't links. It would just say NX info in like plain text, and you couldn't click on it or anything like that. So then you were kind of really stuck. So it took me a while just to even figure out that, like, to figure out what NX info was, you had to go to like this separate place called the structures thing. They had to go and like find like NX info. So my typical day developing an extension would involve like finding this page, seeing NX info, being like, oh, I need to go look up that. So I'd go look up NX info. And then I'd get to this sort of dead end of like, all right, put in a string and a string. All right, well, what if I want to build a hypercube? Well, I'd find the hypercube definition, and it would say, oh, Q dimensions, you need an array of nx dimension. And remember, this wasn't a link back then. So then it was like, okay, now I got to go find nx dimension. Then I go through the list and scroll and find nx dimension. And then it would say, oh, you need to use nx inline dimension. So then I'm over here and I'm like, all right, where the heck is nx inline dimension? And so like next thing you know, you've clicked through like 20 links and you forgot like where you started. You know, so like that pathway keeps going down like 3 or 4 levels. And that was only one of the hypercube features. Then you got to repeat that for nx measure and any other, you know, data pages, whatever else you're trying to do with the API. So I found myself just like playing this sort of game of digging through this side panel, just clicking all these random links and taking notes about what I was trying to put together. Just spending hours doing that, trying to build hypercubes properly to power my extensions. And the thing about it is, if you got any of the syntax wrong, then it just wouldn't work. And it can't really tell you what didn't work. It just would tell you like the structure isn't right. So then you're going through and checking for typos and things like that. So that's where the idea was born for the sort of structure generator. The idea being like, okay, if we have all this metadata about like how these structures need to be formulated, you know, basically the schema of them, then could we build a sort of tool that's user driven to sort of just like click buttons to add this stuff together. So remove the user error, remove the typing, remove the going through all these definitions by hand. Now, to do that first, you actually need the data about the schema to build that kind of tool. Back then, Qlik did not release the data about the schema. So today you can actually get that information in a nice JSON file from a Qlik engine. But back then you couldn't. It didn't really exist other than this format. So fortunately for me, but unfortunately for a new hire at the consulting firm I was working at, my boss let me get this new hire to spend a few hours going through this documentation and by hand populating an Excel spreadsheet with every possible like linkage between all these different definitions. It took him several hours. When I talked to him afterwards, he was not very happy with me that he'd gotten assigned this task. Yeah, going through line by line and like, I mean, I got him not only to get out the names and the types, but also like the descriptions. So he was just spending a lot of time to produce that. Now today you don't even need it, but back then that was all we could do. So once he was able to provide, and that was Kareem, by the way, my friend Kareem, so shout out to him. So once he was able to produce that data, I was then able to ingest it into a tool that I started building using D3 and some other libraries. And I'll show that to you right now. Let me just zoom in a bit. I'm on a really big screen here. It's called the QIX Structure Generator. It's hosted at opensource.accessgroup.com. That's the consulting firm that I was working with. And all of our open source projects are still hosted there, so it's a good resource. And what this allows you to do is sort of pick a structure at the top of the list, these sort of higher level definitions that Qlik offers, like a hypercube, which would power an extension, or a list object, which would power a list box. And there are other ones in this list. And it shows you all the possible values at the top. Now, when you hover the values, it'll give you more information straight from the documentation. So you don't have to go and look at the documentation to figure out what means what. Like if I hover the Q dimensions, it's going to tell me those are an array of dimensions and it's nx dimension. Now, what's nice about this is, you know, once I get to this problem of, okay, well, I know I want dimensions in my chart, but I don't know what an nx dimension is. I can actually start to build this hypercube just by clicking this button and saying, okay, yeah, I do want nx dimensions. And you'll see here this JSON output has been populated. And it's got the Q dimensions value in it. And so then I could say, okay, well, let's add an nx dimension. So I just click this button and now I have a dimension. And if I expand that, here are all the properties for that dimension. So, okay, I can look through these and see, okay, QDef refers to dimension. Okay, I want that. I can click this. And just with a few clicks, I can start to like put together a hypercube without having to really like jump through all these layers and layers of documentation. maybe I have something like, oh, country. And I can go back up and say like, oh, I want to sort the country somehow. So I could add like the sort criteria and then add that in there. This is actually outdated. This is no longer, I'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a little bit out of date. These are no longer strings for the sort criteria. So we'll talk about that. But in this way, you can quickly produce the HyperCube. Even if you don't really know what you're doing, it makes it a little bit hard to get it wrong, right? So you can kind of figure out your way through adding, like, let's say a measure. And we'll just click a couple buttons here. Something like that. And now you have a HyperCube, and you can keep adding more things. Like if you want to populate missing values, you can turn that on or off. Or if you want to have a calculation condition, you can add that. If you want to sort it by a Y value or whatever. And when you're ready to use this JSON, all you have to do is really copy it to your clipboard. And there it is. And now you can go paste it into whatever code editor you're using and then go on with your day. Now, for me, this added tremendous value because, like, not just because this tool allowed me to do this very quickly, but it was like a learning tool where now I write all these HyperCube definitions by hand. I basically have the spec like memorized, and I have it memorized from like using this tool so much that, whereas before I was spending like, you know, I'd been using the engine for months before I built this and still had no idea like where all the properties were, and I was constantly referring to it. But after using this tool for a couple of weeks, I was sort of like often just like writing these definitions by hand at that point, because this thing sort of just made it easy for me to learn how to write HyperCubes or list objects or whatever they might be. So I find it a super useful resource.
Yeah. No, at the end it's actually very cool, because at the end you have actually all the information you need in one side.
I
instead
agree,
of
I mean, I'm
going to.
yeah. I was just saying that.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, that's fine. Just thought you might not be able to hear me because it says your internet connection's unstable. Anyway, yeah. So what I was saying, and I think Speros, you definitely said it, where I kind of also do it all myself, but there is sometimes I just need something that I need, say something like a sorting, and I need kind of something very specific. I kind of then go, okay, well, I don't really know how to do it because it's kind of not working in my example. I use this page a lot. I mean, it's in my favorites on the book bar, because I kind of just want it all the time. So I go in and I can kind of play around and see, oh, okay, I kind of put it in the wrong place, or I can see how it works. And then, like you say, it's kind of it's like, for me, it's like a reference place. I go there for my reference for anything that I want to do or something that I might have not tried before. I reference this. So I don't even bother that much with the engine, unless it's obviously something totally different, but I kind of use this all the time if I want to create HyperCube. So that's why it's just this, you know, once you have this, it makes your life so much easier. So that's why it's, you know, we want people to, you know, play around with this, get familiar with it, and you'll know that like by the end of the week, you'll just be using this and you'll be writing HyperCubes so quickly. It saves you so much time.
Yeah.
That's true. I use this to get started with creating the HyperCube when I was not familiar at all. So this was extremely useful. But one of the questions I had, you mentioned before, Speros, the version is, you've mentioned it's slightly different. Do you know which version of the engine and which version of Qlik Sense this ties up to?
I do. It's embarrassingly old because I just noticed in the top right corner it says 3.1 up there, and it's the only option. So
that's the Qlik Sense version.
Yeah, the Qlik Sense version. Back when Qlik Sense didn't use actual version numbers, not like.
Well, I can confirm it still works and still pretty good.
Most of the stuff hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Any changes are usually like they've maybe added a few things.
Honestly, yeah, I've seen a few additional properties.
Yeah, and the reason we weren't keeping it up to date in the past is for the reason I mentioned before. There was no way to get the schema other than manually typing it out.
Yeah.
So it was a pain. However, it's on kind of my list to go back and update this to now use the schemas that you can actually pull from a Qlik engine. And that's actually, if people are interested in helping, that's a place I could use help to like get it up to date. If someone in the community wants to do that, I can maybe after the call share some more resources about where's the Git repository for this, or if there isn't one on one, and people
Good
can help
idea.
with that. Because the
Oh,
UI works, right? The UI works. You just need to put in a different schema to get the latest engine information.
Yes, please share that with us, because then when we send this to YouTube and Twitter and stuff, we will definitely share the repository so people basically from the community can help. Because at the end, let's be honest, this is a major reference. Even if it's not updated, it can actually allows you to start building what you need. And then, of course, perhaps you need to go and get a very specific variable that is missing or something like that. But like you said, and I agree, things actually haven't changed a lot in terms of the HyperCube stuff. It's more around, perhaps they added a more, one more property or something like that. So it's definitely a very good place for reference to start and to actually to understand the logic how to build the first HyperCube at the end. Yeah.
Right.
No, definitely. No, thank you very much. So in that case, thank you very much for building this, but we need definitely to say thank you to your colleague. What was his name?
Kareem Goddard, yeah.
Okay, thank you for him.
I think it was like his first few months at Axis. I felt really bad for him.
Did he resign after?
He's our hero.
No.
He's good, man.
No, thank you very much for this. I think it's definitely useful. And to be honest, I didn't know that this actually existed. I remember one time, I believe it was you that published on Twitter. And then Ryan actually commented saying, hey, I use this all the time and stuff. But I only actually knew that this actually existed after you guys actually posted. Because I didn't know that this was actually possible, because I was actually doing the same thing, going to the documentation and try to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, thank you very much again. Ryan, Pierce, you guys want to add anything else? Speros as well, do you want to add anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'll just do a quick commercial.
Sure.
I mentioned
okay, let's go.
By Qlik.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll take the time. I'll take 60 seconds. I have this product Knarr. It's built on Qlik. If you like the Qlik associative engine, but you want to do more exploration and maybe less dashboarding, you can go to knarr.io. You can sign up for free. You can see this little video here. It allows multiple people at the same time to come in and load in each other, like data from their own sources, but mix their data together. So anyone can kind of help build a data model or a collection of data models. You can build charts together. You can, in real time, highlight those charts, make selections, add notes about what you're learning, and sort of save off points in time of your analysis. So definitely, if you're kind of a fan of Qlik-based solutions, I recommend.
This is built on top of core, or actually something else?
No, it's built on Qlik Core, yeah. So you'll recognize, I'll log in real quick. You will recognize some of the features around like the associative engine. That's what we're really using. It's just the engine itself. So for example, I have like a data model with some Olympic athletes in it, and you can come in and explore that Olympic athlete data and make selections. Like, let's look at athletes that are just like, I don't know, greater than 30 years old or something like that. You can do all those typical Qlik type of things, but with an interface more focused on sort of rapid exploration and less about like, hey, I'm going to produce a dashboard to deliver to 1,000 people.
Okay. So this is more in terms of trying to give a more self-service platform to basically play around and basically do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's more like, data profiling. Like, for example, just like in our notes feature, let's say I'm doing notes for, Qlik, notes or whatever. I could do something like capture points in time of what I've just found, like call this distribution over 30. And I can come in here and like add more notes about what I'm seeing. So I can keep adding stuff like that in line. Now, as I make changes here, I could change the selections. I could change this chart to maybe be like colored by metal or something like that. Okay. And save this off in line. And now what I can do is like, I could just be doing something completely different. And if I want to go back to that point in time, I can just click these buttons to go back to what I was looking at before. So it's more about collecting like vantage points or insights in the data as you're kind of doing exploration.
So it's almost like, actually the notes is almost like creating a text where you create the snapshots related to those notes or text that you are creating.
Exactly, okay, better than I could. Perfect.
And I'm also right by saying, I mean, the key about this, what I love is that it's collaboration. I mean, that's the key here. When you've got you're busy, Karen, and now you're like, oh, okay, I want to share this with a colleague. They can kind of come and see and also contribute to what you're working on. So I think that to me is very, very powerful.
Correct. So, our model is, you know, we were trying to solve, one of the problems we're trying to solve is like, let me send you a version of that file back and forth, right? Like ping pong with Excel files or QBFs or CSVs, whatever it might be, you know, like, oh, check out version 1, here's version 2, version 3, and people are kind of making edits in a silo. In this tool, you can have like multiple users. You can say I have like 10 people as part of this project. And those people can come in, they can look at these notes, they can like update the notes, they can pull up the snapshots. I can see snapshots that they've been making as well. So this is from a colleague of mine, Malad, and etc. And I can take this thing that like Malad made, for example, and like open it back up in my view to start exploring what he was looking at. So that's exactly right, Ryan. The idea is like that collaboration where all of us can sort of brainstorm together about what the data is telling us. So hopefully we can make a more informed and unanimous decision about what actions to take with that data.
Cool. Really cool, actually. This will definitely be, one day we will definitely annoy you so you can actually explain us all about this and of course your experience with core, because that is also a very interesting topic. And I actually don't see, besides you, actually, to be honest, I might be wrong, but actually besides you, I actually don't see lots of people talking about core or actually experience in deep core how it actually works.
I think this is probably the most notable tool linked to core.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to do it. And there's a few other people. Nick Webster's done some cool stuff with core. He did a project recently. And then measure.io is another one to check out. But absolutely, I'm happy to talk about core and I'll tell you more about my experience with it. The positive and the negative. I'm happy to share it all.
Okay. You will share the positives and we will blur the negatives because of the publicity for Qlik.
Exactly.
Okay. No. Again, thank you very much for joining and for having the time to actually to share your experience with the extensions mashup and of course with your new adventure. I wish you all the best in that case. I hope that everything goes all right. And yeah, again, thank you very much. Guys.
Thank you guys.
Yep.
Cheers.
Anything else?
Thanks very much. If you haven't checked out Speros' video for coronavirus with Knarr, that exploration, that's pretty cool. I was watching that earlier, so do check that out as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, Speros, if you can leave us all the links, all the stuff that you like, you like us to add in the presentation, please just forward, and we will basically add all those links and all that information.
Will do. I'll get you all the links. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
It was very useful, Speros. Thank you very much. Take care, and of course, stay safe. Take care, guys.
Stay safe.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.